on an interim basis.
This matter with Justice McCaffrey is unprecedented.
You have animosity, you have justices being indicted and convicted, you have another justice basically being forced out.
Name calling amongst the justices, sociopath and egomaniac, liar.
They shouldn't be sending pornographic emails to each other, but it's actually even worse.
And it's really kind of a mess.
The Pennsylvania Supreme Court is no stranger to controversy.
You go back to the early 90s, and there's a fractured court with Justice Rolf Larson, who was eventually impeached and removed from the court. And there was a lot of tension and animosity among the justices.
But it would be hard to top the events of the last 2 years.
Scandal rocking the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court tonight. Justice Joan Ori Melvin is now speaking out after being charged with corruption.
She used her staff in campaigning, and she shouldn't have done it. She was charged and convicted and made to apologize to the other judges in Pennsylvania and even send pictures to them with her in handcuffs.
Little did the court realize that its real trouble was just starting.
And I will not resign.
Chief Justice Ron Castile, a Republican, and former Eagles vet stadium judge Justice Seamus McCaffrey, a Democrat, were at each other's throats almost from the start.
Chief Justice Castile, he's a very fiery individual, and McCaffrey's a fiery individual. And so when they got at loggerheads, it kept building and building.
In 2008, Castile caught fire for mishandling the construction of a new family court building in Philadelphia. Allegations abounded of impropriety and cronyism. But the controversy passed, and Castile went after McCaffrey, who provided the Chief Justice with plenty of ammunition.
For a number of years now, Chief Justice Castile has raised concerns about things related to Justice McCaffrey. Chief Justice Castile had been banging the drum on these for a while there, and according to my sources, a number of the justices, while they weren't thrilled with McCaffrey and they actually viewed him as sort of somebody they wanted to distance themselves with, they weren't anxious to join in the fray, and if anything, they were somewhat critical or upset with Chief Justice Castile for making his animosity so public.
But last month, everything changed rapidly. And as bad as it was, it got worse. Castile disclosed that McCaffrey sent over 200 sexually explicit emails to the state attorney general's office. McCaffrey apologized, sort of.
I think the momentum built when Justice McCaffrey issued his apology, which a lot in the legal community viewed as a non-apology. And when he basically spent about 2/3 of his message ripping into Castile and calling him a liar.
That, and the next day when fellow Justice Michael Aiken claimed that McCaffrey essentially extorted him, saying he would reveal to the press that Aiken had received or sent out pornographic emails to the AG's office too, unless, of course, Aiken got Castile to back down. Aiken went public with McCaffrey's alleged threats.
I think that was the tipping point. The minute Aiken's letter went out, I think a lot of people thought, this is done. Within a few days, that happened on a Friday, that letter became public. By Monday, he was suspended. By the following Monday, he had resigned. So it was never just about porn.
Never just about porn. Lynn Marks says the press may have missed the most important aspect behind the scandal.
Well, the porn emails are what got the headlines. It's interesting that you're doing this show on the problems of the Supreme Court. I mean, what a shame. And that's really been the tip of the iceberg. I mean, in the last 10 years, there have been other real big problems, like the Luzerne Kids for Cash crisis, almost the entire bench of the Philadelphia Traffic Court being indicted. I mean, when is enough enough?
What got lost in the glare of the salacious headlines was the fact that members of the state Supreme Court may have committed a serious breach of judicial ethics by communicating directly to prosecutors without defense attorneys knowing what was going on.
Porn, sure, that's bad, but it's actually even worse if they're discussing cases outside the judicial process.
And what gets lost in all this, there's a lot at stake, and the law's been very much hanging in the balance. Unbeknownst to a lot of people outside the legal community, there's a very big case out there involving products liability law and really what the standard should be. One version of the standard is very much considered pro-plaintiff, the other is considered much more defense-friendly. And these are things that affect people's lives, affects corporations. Even if a decision comes down, I don't know how much faith the legal community is going to have in that.
Other state Supreme Courts have faced similar problems. They might want to take a cue from the nation's highest court.
An interesting difference, I think, between the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court is that on the U.S. Supreme Court, the justices will say nasty things about each other's opinions, and in a way that if you're a clerk, say, working at the court, you might take personally and feel offended by. And I did when I was working there. I felt quite hurt and angered by some of the things that some justices said about opinions that I was working on with my justice. But actually, the justices all get along pretty well.
Which is what Pennsylvania is praying for next year.
I think the justices who are there now, I think they sense the problem. I think they're not happy with it. I think there's this almost sense of maybe shame and resolve.
The scandal provides the state with another watershed moment. Is it ready to say yes to a system that it has said no to countless times in the past?
When you elect judges, I mean, that is a strictly partisan political process.
I generally think that appointing judges is better than electing them. We've proven pretty unable to separate money from politics and from campaigns.
It's a flawed system. Problem is I don't think there's any political will whatsoever to change that system at all.
And I think that this scandal should prompt a constitutional convention to have appointed judges, which will reduce the political problems in Pennsylvania, where judges need to spend money and secure contributions from lawyers to get elected to their office. It should be ended.
There's no doubt the Pennsylvania courts have been in turmoil. And as we've heard, this is far from the first time that's happened. In order for the public's faith in the integrity of the system to be restored, there's still a lot of work to be done. But that may come down to whether there's both the political and the judicial willpower. For the American Law Journal, I'm Gina Passarella.